So this is my e-bike build. I know that it looks a little bit aggressive for an e-bike, and I would agree. It's more of an e-motorcycle. That's why I put greenish. It's a motorcycle, but it also came from China, so it's not like these are homegrown parts that I could say, yeah, everything's super, super green. But it's going to be electric, and I think that's a step in the right direction. So here I am giving it a little coat of flat black. I kind of decided on that rather than the glossy stuff to be my color. And so, yeah, I just got everything painted up. And then I moved on to the tire and the motor. So I did have to lace that rim with all those spokes and try and get it balanced, which was a bit of a chore in itself. And then I dealt with a lot of the problems that go along with regular motorcycle rims and tires, and I didn't have any spoke tape to cover up the heads of the spokes, which meant that every time I tried to inflate the tube, that I would pop the tire, or I would pop the tube, I guess, and have to start all over. But eventually I got that all figured out and got the tube back into the tire, and it was finally holding air and not popping every time, so that was awesome. Then I had to start the assembly of the whole rest of the bike. So here I am trying to get it mounted in with the rear end of the bike and get the brake mounted. This was a bit of a chore being one person and not having a proper bike stand or anything like that, but it did go together all right, and I had it together before and did a bit of a trial run, but there's a little bit of a dent in between where the shocks mount there, and that's from the shock when I went down a hill, bottomed right out, put that ding into my frame box here, and it never sprung again. You can see it laying there. Like the spring is compressed by 2 inches. So in between my build here, I made a piece of wood so that at least I could mock everything up and get it so that hopefully it would be comfortable. Later on, I did take some flat bar and laminate a bunch of pieces of it together so that I could keep it as a little bit of a hardtail until I find, I think probably like an 80cc or maybe 125cc motorbike shock and put that in there, because the bike is really heavy. I think the motor in the back is about 80 pounds just by itself. Maybe it's a little bit less. Maybe it's 60, but it's really heavy. So the whole bike is heavy. I'm heavy too, and so we're gonna have to find something fairly skookum. Definitely not just a chunk of plywood or chunk of 2x4 that I cut down like there. But the bike's all put together. I'm gonna have to fill the frame with the rest of the components and get them wired up. But it does look like a bike at that point. So next I had to find a way to put this thing together and then be able to test it without having it run off. So I'm making a little jury-rigged strap system from the roof, and then I'll be able to hold the bike vertically and work on it to get the rest of the wiring done, and it won't be quite as messy. So the bike here, we're just strapping everything up, and then pretty quick it'll be held up on its own. I do have some of the components in there, but that was done prior, and then later on I took everything back out to try and find a better way to put everything in there. It really does have to be shoehorned in there to get everything to fit right, and then hopefully not catch on fire because of one reason or another, sparks or who knows what, because this is my first time doing it. And there's not a ton of information out there on the internet on how to do it safely and properly. Everything is sort of proprietary information, of course. Everybody's still in that point where they don't want to give up the information to actually make it. They're usually selling that information. So Here I'm messing around with the controller plugs and getting them all hooked up to the battery and the different components that are around the bike. The instructions are quite complex just because a lot of the information is in Chinese, and so there was a little bit of trial and error and just crossing our fingers and hoping that nothing lit on fire or exploded or just got destroyed. So at this point I'm finally ready to give the rear motor a try, and sure enough it spins, which is just unbelievable when you do it. You feel like it's a bit of a magic trick because there's no real noise. It's not like you've started an engine and then all of a sudden the wheel starts to turn. Like, it's pretty incredible. So I just charged it up, and then at this point I'm going to take it for its very first rip, and it just happened to be the end of the year and there's still a little bit of snow on the ground. So I take it outside and it worked great. There's still some snags and hiccups, but it'll pop the tire off the ground, and the acceleration's just absolutely mind-boggling. Like, I don't know what the actual speed of it is, but commuting, it's nothing to carry 30 kilometers an hour. I think the motor says that it should do 80 kilometers an hour, but I don't have the wheels balanced well enough to actually try that out. I did put the GPS here in my pocket. I was showing the camera for this little ride with a little bit warmer temps, but I still haven't pushed it right to the max. I need the wheels balanced a little bit better, and then I'll be able to take it for a real good crack. But here is its sort of first run, testing a lot of the components. It was summer, and
so getting
I'm
back
gonna
be
try and
problematic.
beat this
There's also
storm.
coming, so that's cool.
All of the components that are in this build sort of equate to about like an eight to $10,000 to $12,000 bike, depending on where you're trying to get it from. The motor is really expensive, the controller is expensive, the battery's expensive, just because you're buying a lot of capacity that is both range but also like power. And so yeah, I was just hoping that I wouldn't ever find a spot where, whether it was range, there was going to be a point where I thought, I could always use a little bit more, and I think it probably did that. There's more power than you could ever want, and here I am driving into the storm and then deciding to avoid it. But it was a pretty awesome build. I just love the idea of being able to essentially drive from the sun when I do get some solar panels. And then I decided to take my kid's trailer bike and put some milk crates on it, and it's one of the best practical additions I could ever imagine, because you can just fill it up at the hardware store with whatever you want, and then you get home apparently the green way. And so here's a little bit of a close-up, and it is a little bit janky, I'm not gonna lie to you. There's a lot of paracord, there's some bolts, but it does the trick. And so I'm gonna be thrilled for another season here of grocery getting around town on electricity. And yeah, it's the first electric thing that I've owned, and I just love it. I think it's brilliant, and thanks a lot for watching.